off the charts. The world must see. Let's talk about protecting yourself. A teen who was behind a $100,000 cryptocurrency scheme has been sentenced to prison. Graham Ivan Clark, 18, hacked over 100 high-profile Twitter accounts and used those accounts to scam six figures worth of cryptocurrency from people around the world. So if these high-profile accounts can get hacked this easily, how difficult would it be for a determined hacker to target you or me? This is why I love using Virtual Shield, Virtual Private Network. It grants you an extra layer of internet protection by allowing you to browse your favorite websites anonymously. I tried out the top VPNs around the world, and Virtual Shield hands down is my favorite. There's no hidden fees, and Virtual Shield has strict no-log policy, unlike typical VPNs you'll find recommended online. It's fast, secure, it's easy to use. I highly recommend Virtual Shield. Try it today for 50% off by going to virtualshield.com/X22 or click the link in the description. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, the mainstream media, the corrupt politicians, their panic over this election audit is off the charts. Now remember, if this was a completely secure election, the securest election we've ever seen in our lifetime, a completely transparent election, a completely honest election, those individuals in the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the invisible enemy, social media companies, the fake news, they wouldn't be worrying about this because there'd be nothing to find. Since they're sending 100 lawyers, we have now Biden's Department of Justice getting involved. We have the mainstream media, the fake news, flipping out over it, saying it's all a conspiracy. You don't need to investigate anything because there's nothing wrong. Well, how do you know unless you investigate? Does the IRS audit people? Why would they audit people? Why would they audit companies? They've never seen Trump's taxes. Why did they want to see them? Why do they want to go through them? They have no idea if there's any crime in there. They're just guessing. Why would you do any type of investigation? Because on the surface, you don't know if there's something wrong. But if you get a tip and you start to investigate and you start to realize there's anomalies, there's crimes, there's things that don't make sense, you push further. So this has nothing to do with a conspiracy. We just want to make sure that the election system is secure and it's free of fraud on both sides. Republican, Democrat, Independent, you name it. It should be for the American people, right? So we just want to audit it, and we want to make sure there was nothing going on under the table. And why would they be so afraid of this? Think about what happens when you catch someone cheating or catch someone stealing. They freak out. They scream and yell. They don't want you talking about it. Don't look there, look over here. This is exactly what they're doing. And you can see that the panic is completely off the charts. But the world must see how the invisible enemy, not just in this country, but around the world, how they have the ability to manipulate elections. You think when the people of the world see this, they're going to call into question their election system, especially if they're using the same exact machines? They're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. If this is happening out in America, this is happening here. And the world is going to wake up. This is going to be the biggest awakening that we have ever seen. And it's going to call into question everything the deep state, the invisible enemy, the corrupt media has been doing for a very long time. Yes, it's going to call them out. That day is coming, and it's quickly approaching, and they know this. This is why they're pulling out all assets to stop it. And while this is happening, the people around the world are waking up. They're reaching the precipice of destruction. And we're starting to see it in small pockets in this country, where parents are getting together and they're pushing back, saying that we don't want critical race theory. We don't want masks. And the boards, they're running because they can't handle it. This is just the beginning. This is also happening worldwide, where people are marching on the streets saying enough is enough. This is going to be global, where the global population, they reach the precipice of destruction. When you reach the precipice, you demand change. What do you think happened in Southlake, Texas? They demanded change, and they got it. What do you think is happening out in Utah? Yes, the same thing just happened. They demanded change, and they got it. This is going to happen all over the place. We'll be talking a lot about this a little bit later in this report. But first, I wanted to talk about John Kerry here, because we know from a lot of the Q posts that John Kerry was shadowing Trump, and he was meeting with Iran, and we know that Obama was doing the same exact thing. His time will be coming. Remember, he's hiding in the basement talking to Joe Biden right now. And we know that everything that Trump tried to do with Iran, John Kerry was countering it. Now we have the leaked phone calls. We have the evidence. And it seems that Chuck Grassley right now, he is saying, okay, enough's enough. We need to look into this. He's asking Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Acting Inspector General Diana Shaw to examine the allegations. And he said, as ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, he's saying, I'm asking that the records regarding meetings that Kerry had with Zarif be sent to the committees for review. His deadline is May 18th. Now, do you think the Biden administration is going to really do anything? Do you think Anthony Blinken and Diana Shaw, they're actually going to look at this? Absolutely not. Do you think Grassley is going to be looking at this? Yes, he will. And we'll have to see how this all plays out, because now it is out in the public realm, and it was not known of before. And now people know about it and what he did. Now, down at the border, the mainstream media is playing up the child angle. And we can see that this has been set up to make everyone think like, oh, look, he's reuniting all the children with the parents. But remember what these people did. Because under Obama's policies, the children were allowed to come up, cross the border, and Obama would take these children. Some of these children were 15, 16, 17, and they would be sent to different states, which then allowed their parents to come up. Basically, they came into the country illegally, but the administration allowed this, and they pushed them into sanctuary cities. They didn't want to wait online. They didn't want to be vetted like everyone else. So basically, they broke the law, and they skipped the entire line. And this is what came out of World News Tonight. It says, emotional reunions. Some migrant families separated under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy are being reunited under President Biden, including a mom from Honduras who is back with her two sons after over 3 years. Well, Richard Grenell responded to this, and he said, disgusting bias. These propagandists at ABC failed to say that these people broke the law, jumped the line, and they gave up their children so the children could live in America as minors without waiting in line. The children could have stayed with their parents. And that's exactly what they did, because the Obama administration, along with Joe Biden, they allowed this. And once again, unless you vet people, unless you know who they are, you don't know who the parents are. You don't know if they're human traffickers. Think about it. Take your home. Would you just open the door and let anyone stay in there without vetting them, without knowing who they are? Would you just believe them? Oh, yes, can I sleep in that bedroom up there? Sure, come on in. You can sleep up there, no problem. Would you ever do that? No. Same thing with this country. We don't know if these are MS-13 gang members. We don't know if these are child traffickers. We don't know anything about these people. But look what they're trying to do. They're trying to convince everyone. But people aren't buying it anymore, because now people know exactly what has been going on this entire time. Remember, Trump trapped them in all of this. Under Obama, they had all their mechanisms and everything in place, and they hid a lot of this stuff like the cages and things like that because, yes, the fake news works for them. They're the bullhorn of the deep state. So they never, or if they did, they downplayed it quite a bit. And when Trump came into office, they hyped it up, even though Obama built these things. Trump, his administration was just using it because it was there. And they made it seem like he was the one that put it all together, which really was the opposite. It was Obama, part of his plan. Trump removed the mechanisms that they had in place where they can just bring people in, put them on a bus, send them over to a sanctuary city, and they'd just be lost forever. Trump removed that, secured the border, because he knew what was coming. He knew that Biden was going to call down to Central America and say, send everyone up. And that's exactly what he did. And since all their mechanisms are removed, what happens? You have a crisis. People can see it. People experience it. They question it, especially when there's a pandemic. That's what everyone has been watching. Now, what's very interesting is that we know that the social media companies, the deep state, the invisible enemy, they're pushing their agenda of censorship, of trying to control the narrative. And remember, this is infiltration from within. Now, what's very interesting is Google-backed RAND report recommends infiltrating and subverting online conspiracy groups from within. The initial analysis was focused on online chatter relating to alien visitations, COVID-19 origins, white genocide, and anti-vaccination. Now, the Biden administration, they support big tech crackdown on disinformation. So we have to go back to this. What is disinformation? How do you know if it's disinformation? Well, the fake news has been pushing Russian collusion for 3 years. Some of them are still doing it. And that turned out to be fake. Was that disinformation? Because on the other side, people were saying there was no such thing as Russian collusion. It's all fake. Well, that was slated as disinformation. Right now, we're saying there's election fraud. That's disinformation. What happens when election fraud is proven? Just like there was no Russian collusion. So who's controlling what's disinformation or what's not? That's why the founding fathers said free speech, unless you break the law. Because who's the judge? Who's telling you that's hateful? That's disinformation. Where are you getting your facts from? This is why the mainstream media, the fake news, and the social media companies, they came up with this fact-checking. That completely failed. How come they removed the fact-checking with Biden? Why did the Washington Post discontinue it? Because they know that this was all BS. So Biden, he's working with big tech and saying, yes, I agree with this. Fascism. Just like Judicial Watch came up with the documentation that government officials have a hotline into these social media companies and they tell who they want taken down. Same thing in Michigan and many other places. So this goes way beyond Section 230. Now, YouTube, they're going to be spending about $7 million on 2 new journalism programs. One for small digital newsrooms and one for digital independent journalists. I wonder which journalists are going to be using this. Well, we know what it is. It's just a repackaging of the same thing that we have today, making it seem like it's different. Now there's different journalists doing this, but they're controlled by the same entities. Now, Twitter, they are now putting into place a mechanism that will call out mean tweets. So before you tweet, it will tell you, well, maybe you should read this over and rewrite it. So basically what they're doing is they're controlling what people say. It sounds like now you'll be self-censoring. You'll be using precision of language. And you have to conform or you can't tweet this out. Now, in the beginning stages, it's just a warning. But later on, AI is going to learn all of it. And soon, the system will change it for you. And soon, people won't be saying what they really want to say. The social media companies, the deep state, the invisible enemy, will be speaking for you. That's what they're looking to do here. Now, it seems that Twitter, they suspended communications director's account of Elise Stefanik. Now, remember, she's replacing Liz Cheney. Now, of course, they came out and they said, well, this was an error. It was a glitch. It was an accident. And if you notice, how come these glitches never happened to Pelosi, Schiff, Nadler, Biden, and the rest? It seems like it's always one way. And Elise Stefanik put this out. Big tech on the move. Twitter just suspended my communication director. An unconstitutional overreach, silencing our voices and freedom of speech. Republicans are united in fighting back against big tech tyranny. Millions of Americans will not be silenced. Well, you need to remember, they're putting all this in place, and yes, they're going to be censoring a lot more people. And when they're caught, they have to backtrack on it. These are not errors. These are not glitches. And they're preparing for something much, much larger. And what are they preparing for? They're preparing for the election fraud information that's coming out and everything that comes out after that. Treason, crimes against humanity, because it won't stop with election fraud. That is just the beginning. And don't forget about Durham. He's still working on all of this. And don't forget about Trump, where he declassified the information. It's not gone. It's going to be used at the right time. And Mike Pompeo, he tweeted this out. Facebook's ban on President Trump is yet another overreach in the left's crusade to silence conservative voices. We must stand up to this tyranny. Free speech is fundamental right, and we must fight to defend it. Trump, he put this out on his new site, the desk of Donald Trump, and it says, the fake news media, working in close conjunction with big tech and the radical left Democrats, is doing everything they can to perpetrate the term the big lie when speaking of the 2020 presidential election fraud. They are right in that the 2020 presidential election was a big lie, but not in the way they mean. The 2020 election, which didn't even have legislative approvals from many states, which is required under the U.S. Constitution, and was also otherwise corrupt, was indeed the big lie. So when they try to sell the American people the term the big lie, which they do in unison and coordination, think of it instead as the greatest fraud in the history of our country. An even greater hoax than Russia, 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 Mueller, 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 impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, or any other many scams the Democrats pulled. Now, what's very interesting is that this was put out at 11:57. So if we go back to post 11:57, this is from April 15, 2018, and what does it say? Has POTUS made a statement found not to be true? Nothing stated should be discounted. So far, everything that he's been talking about seems to be coming true. And you can see that they're panicking. Now, when the election fraud information comes out, we'll be talking about election fraud in just a sec, everyone should know that there are backup plans for different people's sites. So you might want to ask them what the backup plans are, because I do believe when the election fraud is produced, it might not happen as soon as it's produced because they're going to try to spin it, but as more and more information comes out, they're going to go into a communication blackout. So if that does happen for the X22report.com, come to X22report.com. That is where everything is. If something should happen there, I have a backup plan. If you want to join the mailing list, you can do that. So this way I can email you to let you know where I am. Now, if you're listening to me on Twitter or YouTube right now, there is no X22 Report YouTube channel. It's a fake channel. They morph my voice. They change the graphics, and it's fake. The same thing on Twitter. If you're hearing this on Facebook or Instagram, same thing. The only places the X22 is X22report.com. Yes, you can find out where the official accounts are because there's a menu that you can click on. It's everything X22, and down below it says official accounts. And the official accounts are Telegram, Gab, Minds, BitChute, Rumble, and the Cloud Hub, and the X22report.com site. I would say go to the X22report.com site because that is the hub for everything. So let's continue. Now, it seems around the world things are starting to fall apart for these leaders. Out in France, we're starting to see that Macron has a problem. Now, Marine Le Pen, leader of the French Conservative Opposition Party, has come out in support of the 20 French generals who signed an open letter warning of a civil war in France. Le Pen is currently polling first place in French elections to be held in 2022. And this week, Le Pen was also acquitted of charges of hate speech for exposing radical Islamist propaganda on Twitter. Now, she penned this letter, and this is what it says. Gentlemen, generals, officers, representatives of all armies and all branches, you have signed an open letter calling for our leaders to return to honor. Your initiative, rare in the military, testifies to the level of concern you have in the face of the worrisome deterioration of the situation in our country. Your outspoken but fair observation, made in very strong terms, constitutes a public challenge that no one can ignore given your reputation. With the courage of those who have dedicated their lives to their country, you criticize our leaders very directly, questioning their responsibility quite legitimately, urging them to regain the ability to act and restore our honor. As a citizen and a politician, I agree with your analysis and share your concerns. Like you, I believe it is the duty of all French patriots, wherever they're from, to stand up for the restoration and even the salvation of our country. However, I believe that an open letter will not be enough to persuade our failing leadership to change its shameful ways. The recent pronouncements by the President of France on his project to deconstruct the history of France indeed show us these harmful tendencies are not the result of a movement of confusion, but from a political agenda powered by fundamentally destructive ideology. The concerns you so bravely express cannot remain a mere expression of outrage. However, in a democracy, we must look for a political solution which must materialize through a process of dialogue which must be validated by the French voters. This is the motivation for my political agenda, of my candidacy for the French presidency, with the objective of forming a government that will unify the nation. Many senior officials and leading figures of society have rallied to our cause. I invite you to join us in the struggle which is beginning, a peaceful and political struggle, which is above all the struggle for France. And we're not just seeing this happen out in France. It seems Trudeau is having problems in Canada. And we have Merkel in Germany. She is also having problems. I do believe that this is going to spread across the world, especially when the evidence of election fraud comes out. Now, with the pandemic, the people around the world, they are now pushing back. Because remember, everything that they put in place has nothing to do with science. It has to do with control. And here in the United States, the Department of Justice, they are appealing a federal judge decision to vacate the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's temporary federal eviction moratorium. The court ruled the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention temporary eviction moratorium is unconstitutional. The CDC under the Biden administration has sought to extend the eviction moratorium through June 30th. But the D.C. District Judge, Dabney Friedrich, ruled that, listen, the CDC overstepped its authority by extending the eviction moratorium because they don't have the authority to do this. Remember, the CDC, they put out guidelines. They can't infringe upon your rights. They can just make recommendations. This is what we believe. Now, I think every single American should say, whatever you put out there, we need to see the actual science behind it. Like when you tell us to stand 6 feet apart or 12 feet apart or 3 feet apart, can we see the actual science that led you to this? Let's talk about protecting yourself. A teen who was behind a $100,000 cryptocurrency scheme has been sentenced to prison. Graham Ivan Clark, 18, hacked over 100 high-profile Twitter accounts and used those accounts to scam 6 figures worth of cryptocurrency from people around the world. So if these high-profile accounts can get hacked this easily, how difficult would it be for a determined hacker to target you or me? This is why I love using Virtual Shield, Virtual Private Network. It grants you an extra layer of internet protection by allowing you to browse your favorite websites anonymously. I tried out the top VPNs around the world, and Virtual Shield hands down is my favorite. There's no hidden fees, and Virtual Shield has strict no-log policy, unlike typical VPNs you'll find recommended online. It's fast, secure, it's easy to use. I highly recommend Virtual Shield. Try it today for 50% off by going to virtualshield.com/X22 or click the link in the description. Before we're going to follow these guidelines, if you're telling us to wear masks, can we see the science behind it, which is peer-reviewed? It's a clinical trial. We can replicate it. And you tested every piece of fabric, and it works against the virus. Because if you can't show us any of this, everything that you're saying is your opinion. So since it's your opinion, we don't have to follow it and show us that there's real science behind it. Because if there's real science, then we'll think about following it. This is how it should work. And every American should be going to the CDC calling for proof. Now, what's very interesting is that the WHO, very quietly, changed their definition for herd immunity. Now, this was their definition back on June 9th, 2020. This is what it said. Herd immunity is the indirect protection from an infectious disease that happens when a population is immune, either through vaccination or immunity developed through previous infection. Now, very interestingly, on November 13, 2020, they changed it to this. Herd immunity is also known as population immunity, is a concept used for vaccination, in which a population could be protected from a certain virus if a threshold of vaccination is reached. If you notice, they just made it about vaccinations, because in their previous statement about herd immunity, it says, when a population is immune either through vaccination or immunity developed through previous infection. Why did they leave that out? Very interesting, because they want everyone vaccinated. Remember, you have a choice, especially in this country. Now, like we said in the very beginning, the people, they are reaching the precipice of destruction. We've seen it already in Texas, many other places. Now in Utah, the Granite School District, the parents were there, the school board was there, and the parents started to chant, let's get rid of the mask. No mask, no mask. The parents are fed up. And the school board, they walked out. And you know what the parents in the school district did? They voted themselves in, just like in Texas. It seems that this is spreading. Take a listen to a small portion of this.
One senator and one teacher. Parents are fed up.
It seems when people reach the precipice of destruction, they're demanding change, and it's happening. More people need to do this. Now, it seems that infiltration from within is completely obvious now. We can see that certain individuals are put into certain positions, and we see another individual being put into a certain position. Katie Hill. This is Obama's former comms director. Now, she is going to be working for the NFL, just like we see other individuals work for the mainstream media. It's infiltration from within. They put people into key places, and you have these organizations go along with the agenda. This is why we see it in Hollywood. This is why we see it in the sport organizations. This is why we see it on the fake news. This is why we see it all over the place. Now, what's very interesting is that Black Lives Matter, they publish an updated set of demands on their website, which includes a permanent banning on Trump from ever holding office again. First of all, I thought this has to do with Black Lives Matter. All right, it's only the Black lives that they want to matter. And why are they putting out these demands? They have no say in this. So is this an activist organization that's going outside of their framework? It's starting to seem that way. And yes, they have a list of 7 demands. Convict and ban Trump from future political office. Expel Republican members of Congress who attempt to overturn the election and incited a white supremacist attack. And it goes on and on and on. So what does this have to do with Black lives? Nothing. This is a movement created by the deep state to push this country into a socialist country. This is part of their 16-year plan. But it seems that the states are fighting back. Florida, Texas, they're banning woke philosophies. They're getting rid of critical race theory. They're getting rid of the 1619 Project. And this is going to spread. Now, what's very interesting is that all the governors that are working for the people, that are allowing them to have their freedom, those governors, their polling numbers are going up. Governors like Andrew Cuomo, like Murphy of New Jersey, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, and the rest, their poll numbers are going down. Take, for example, Cuomo. There was a poll that was put out there, and Andrew Cuomo's net favorability dropped by 28%, negative 28%. Ron DeSantis is up positive 2. Very big difference. And yesterday we talked about how Murphy of New Jersey, his numbers are falling. People now, because of this crisis, you can see their true colors. You can see who the dictators are. You can see their true agenda. Before, they hid behind their political talk. They hid behind what they wanted you to see. But when the crisis hit, you can see their true nature. You can see who they really are. Now, what's very interesting is that Biden supposedly won Georgia, but the people of Georgia, they don't agree with what he's doing. They don't like the direction the country is going in. They're saying it's going in the wrong direction. 52% of Georgians believe that Biden and the far-left Democrats have pushed Americans down the wrong path. But I thought he won Georgia. I thought everyone wanted him. But now, the state's saying no. And actually, 53.5% of Georgians oppose the All-Star Game being moved from their state in response to the voter integrity laws. Remember, what businesses did they hurt? The black businesses. This was done on purpose because they don't like the voter integrity laws. They don't like these laws being put into place so there's no fraud. Remember, the only way they can put certain leaders into position is by using fraud. Why do you think these people have been in government for 40, 50, 60 years? It's not because the people love them. It's because they continue to cheat. You think Biden has been in office for 47 years because people love him? He's doing such a great job. He really benefited the American people. You think Maxine Waters is loved by the people because she's an incredible leader? No. Look at her neighborhood. But from all of this and everything the deep state has been trying to do, it's not working. People are seeing through this. Actually, look at the armed insurrection of January 6th, which really never happened. It was a false flag. You know what they found? They found no arms. Isn't that strange? It's an armed insurrection, but they found really no weapons. What did they find? They found a stick, a baseball bat, a taser. They found a police helmet, a knife, a hockey stick, and an ice axe. And did anyone use these things? Yes. That was Antifa, when they used the bats to break the windows. The other weapons were found on the people, and when asked, why did you have them? Because we were afraid of Antifa. We were afraid of being attacked. They weren't using it in the attack. They were keeping them just in case Antifa was going to attack them. And these people weren't even involved. There were no real weapons. I mean, if there was really an insurrection, you think someone's going to bring a bat? No. Do you really think someone's going to bring a small little knife? No, you're going to have real weapons there if you're going to actually have an insurrection. This whole thing was created. It was a false flag. And we know from video, from evidence, that Antifa, BLM, they were already in the building. They were bringing the people in. It's all a bunch of fake news as usual. Now, it seems that Liz Cheney, she is not having a good time now. Because according to a new poll from the Club for Growth, it shows that 52% of likely Republican primary voters said that they would not vote for Cheney next year, no matter the opponent. Trump, he is shaping the entire offensive. Remember, he's building the offensive with the Republican Party. What do you think he's going to do with the corrupt politicians? Well, a lot of these people are being forced out. What about the other side? What do you think is going to happen to them on the other side? It's going to be a very different game. Now, as we were talking about election laws, it seems that DeSantis, he signed the election security law. And this means they have enhanced voter ID in Florida. There's going to be limits on the drop boxes, voting by mail, ballot harvesting, basically securing the election. So it's going to be very, very difficult to cheat in the election. And the White House condemns Florida election security laws. Why? Because they're secure and they can't cheat anymore? Think about Georgia. Think about Arizona. Think about all the different states like Wisconsin and the rest that have been implementing laws. Now, Trump, he tweeted this out about Windham, New Hampshire. He said, "Congratulations to the great patriots of Windham, New Hampshire, for their incredible fight to seek out the truth on the massive election fraud which took place in New Hampshire and the 2020 presidential election. The spirit for transparency and justice is being displayed all over the country by media outlets which do not represent fake news. People are watching in droves as these patriots work tirelessly to reveal the real facts of the most tainted and corrupt election in American history. Congratulations, Windham. Look forward to seeing the results." Yes, we're all looking forward to that. Remember, this is a movement. This is a movement to show the world the deep state system and how they do it. This is why there's a forensic audit going on right now, to show people exactly how they do it step by step. Not just saying, oh, look, there's a little fraud here, and we have a couple of ballots that were mismarked. No, this is going to be a step-by-step tutorial showing everyone how the fraud was done in the 2020 presidential election. And they're going to show it so the entire public can see it. Now, out in Arizona, it seems that they're about 17.3% complete on auditing the ballots and everything else. Now, what's very interesting about all this, you can see how the deep state, the invisible enemy, you can see how they're panicking because the Department of Justice, they're expressing concern about the Arizona audit, that it's violating election law. That's interesting. An audit is violating election law, but the fraud didn't violate the election law. Wait, let's even go back further than that. You mean laws being created by governors, attorney generals, secretary of states? That's not violating the election law because the only people that can make laws are the legislatures. And the legislatures didn't make any of those laws. So who's really violating the election law? It was all those states. But let's continue here. The Department of Justice expressed concern that the ongoing audit of the 2020 election results in Arizona may violate election law and lead to voter intimidation. It's always nice how they like to use voter intimidation, race. If you have voter ID, it's racist. They always like to use that. It's about emotion. That's what they use. The department notified Republican State Senator President Karen Fann that it was monitoring the state's audit of 2.1 million ballots cast in Maricopa County. The Department of Justice specifically worried that outsourcing the audit to a third-party contractor may violate federal election law that requires election officials to control ballots for 22 months after election. Now, we knew that this was all going to come to a head. We knew that they were going to fight back. They were going to push very, very hard. If they didn't, then we know that there was no election fraud. If they just said, oh, yeah, go ahead, do all the election forensic audit that you want, we don't care about that, we would know that there was nothing there. Since they're pushing back and they sent 100 lawyers, now the Department of Justice is getting involved, we know there's a problem with Maricopa County. We also know that this is going to spread to other places. This is why they're panicking. So the feds are attempting to get involved in the Maricopa County ballot audit. Now, this is coming from the conservative treehouse. Remember, previously the Department of Justice narrative was that each state makes up its own election rules. Now the Department of Justice is saying falsely that Arizona might be breaking federal laws. Their first concern, as predicted, centers around ballot security. Again, remember, the Maricopa County Election Board would not let the auditors use the county tabulation center, so the ballots and equipment had to be moved to Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Now the Department of Justice is citing that move as a potential issue for the security of the ballots and auditing procedures. The first issue relates to a number of reports suggesting that the ballots, election systems, and election materials that are the subject of the Maricopa County audit are no longer under the ultimate control of state and local election officials, are not being adequately safeguarded by contractors at an insecure facility, and are at risk of being lost, stolen, altered, compromised, or destroyed. Well, we know that they're being guarded. We know that they're not being destroyed. There's cameras all over the place. It's completely transparent. Now, federal law creates a duty to safeguard and preserve federal election records. The department is charged with enforcement of provisions of the Civil Rights Act of 1960. This statute requires state and local election officials to maintain, for 22 months after the conduct of election for federal office, all records and papers relating to any act requisite to voting in such election. The Department of Justice's second issue is even more obtuse. They cite federal election law for voter rights, as the Department of Justice is worried that auditors will visit and intimidate people and places who have record of multiple ballots from the same address or non-residents. Both issues are moot. Why is the Department of Justice doing this? They're attempting to build a framework to undermine the results of the audit when fraud is uncovered. But we need to remember something very, very important. Feds have zero jurisdiction in state elections. Yes, they're trying to get involved. Yes, they're trying to set something up, but it will fail. Now, very interestingly, Dr. Kelly Ward, she put this out on Twitter, and it says, these are the servers for Maricopa County elections. The external drives that were loaded with nightly early vote totals are circled. Scott Jarrett, and it's actually a shelf with drives on there, and they're circled in red. Scott Jarrett said that they were taken to an off-site, undisclosed location nightly for safety by an employee or a Dominion contractor working for MC. So the question is, who handled these external drives? What was on them? Where did they go? These questions need to be answered, because that's kind of odd. And remember, they also didn't want to hand over the routers or tabulators. And remember, there were subpoenas that were issued by the Arizona Senate, which required them to hand these things over. Remember, they have system logs. They have a lot of things on here. So why aren't they complying with the subpoenas? They're refusing to comply. Everyone should question this. What don't they want people to see? Now, another thing that came out is that the Maricopa County, they admitted that they did not have admin access to the 2020 election. What does this mean? It means they ceded ownership of the election to their outside system provider. It means they weren't in control of the election. They were just spectators. They were watching. They didn't have the password. So that's another question that everyone should be asking. Because why weren't they in control of the election? Why was Dominion in control? Something's wrong here. And this is why we have the Department of Justice under Biden. This is why we have the mainstream media fake news freaking out. This is why they're panicking. Because once all this is going through, once everyone sees all of this, there's going to be no question whatsoever. Amber Walker put this out on Gab. If the Maricopa County forensic audit shows that Trump lost fairly, 75+ million Americans will accept it. Unfortunately for the deep state cabal, it will likely show that 20,000 absentee ballots cast from addresses other than where the voter legally resided. Over 22,000 absentee ballots returned on or before the postmark date. Over 36,000 non-citizen voters, 5,700 plus out-of-state voters who voted in the state, 5,700 ghost voters, and 11,000 plus overvotes. We only need 10,000 votes to win. So, yes, if we did this audit, and it was done properly, fairly, completely transparent, and it shows that there was no fraud, and yes, Biden won by all these votes, we would say, okay, it was done correctly. Now, the other side should do the same exact thing. Because if the audit proves that there was fraud, that means they took the people's voice away from them. Yes, this time it might have gone to the candidate that certain people wanted, but next time it might not. And this is very important. Remember, as Americans, we have our constitutional right to elect our leaders. We're not relying on the invisible enemy, the deep state, to choose for us or to steal our voice. And it doesn't matter what side you're on. It doesn't matter who you are. You should want this right, because if it happened this time this way, it might not happen the same the next time. Now, what's very interesting is that Mark Meadows, he appeared on Fox News, And he said some very interesting thing, and Teresa Ann Marie put this out on Twitter. It said, just dropped some good info regarding POTUS. Trump is not necessarily waiting until 2022 to take action. In the next 2 to 6 weeks, we'll see additional platforms where he is able to communicate once again. Trump rallies are definitely coming soon. Now, this is very interesting because I know he keeps avoiding the question of 2024. And like I said, if the elections aren't fixed and there's still fraud and the deep state, the invisible enemy, they still have the ability to cheat, what would change in 2024? They would just cheat again. You think they really want him back in power? No. This is why Trump is allowing the world to see this. People had to experience the fraud. Then they have to experience the exposure of the fraud. Remember, we're in the phase where they're exposing the system. And that's what people are going to see, not just in this country, but worldwide. And that brings me back to post 4,414, and Major Patriot put this out. He said, well, I just learned that Elise Stefanak's district is home to the 10th Mountain Division. And I do believe that these Red 1, Red 2, they weren't going to happen simultaneously. I think this is going to happen throughout this entire plan of the Patriots. We've already seen the POTUS Twitter removal. I don't think we've seen Red 2. Central Communication Blackout, Continental U.S. This is when they shut all communications down of anyone trying to say certain things. There's still people on Twitter saying certain things, on YouTube and things like that. I don't think that we've seen a central communication blackout just yet. And Red 3, Red 4, and Red 5, and Red 6, I don't believe we saw it. Now, when I look at Castle Rock now, and I know a lot of people think it's a movie set and things like that, but I think it's referring to rocking the castle, rocking the White House. Who's in the White House? Biden. I think when this all plays out, we're going to see something completely different than what we thought was going to happen. I believe that all of this is going to come into play, and the White House is going to be rocked, and the world is going to see the system firsthand, and the people are going to unite, and the people are going to demand justice. And yes, the deep state, they're going to freak out. The deep state, they're going to deploy all assets. They're going to use every piece of ammunition they have to try to shut this down. And I do believe once the government is incapacitated, we're going to see the military step in to keep the peace because there'll be no civilian government at this time. And it's already been set up. Trump already laid out the plans. I do believe this is just the beginning, and we're going to see a lot happen. And we're at the precipice of producing the election fraud to the people of this world. Listen.